All right, you can hear my voice get scratchy. My student will also be at the poster and will be helping me, especially when it gets really loud. Please excuse if she's gonna do the answering and I'm gonna be the second level support. I have to move you to the side because all of these speaker desks are not designed for people of my height, so it feels a little awkward to sit down here. All right, first of all, I'm very honored that this is a full SIGIR Best Paper Award, no further qualifiers, because this was a resource paper. I didn't even know I was in the pool for it. I'm gonna talk about the resource. We're also gonna be talking tomorrow at the LLM for Eval workshop. And we also, so interestingly, the resource paper got accepted, but the full paper where we did research with that thing got rejected. So you can read about it at the SIGIR proceedings, and we're also very happy to talk more about that one. Okay, so. All right, so what we're trying to do, and I think you were asking a lot of questions, and I think a lot of questions in the rooms where I really was like, yes, and I have the answer for it. Or if I don't have the answer for it, I have the code ready to provide answers for that. The idea is with LLMs, and like last year we had this SIGIR best paper with a whole bunch of people like Fagioli and other people, where we kind of showed that yes, empirically you can use LLMs to do judgments. And usually it's sort of like a prompt like, is this passage relevant for this query? Yes, no, how much, and so on and so forth. And you can find a ton of different prompts with variations like double quotes, single quotes, yes, no, answer, yes, no, without answer. And they all give you sort of like slightly different results, which is just as a machine learner not surprising to me at all. Okay. So then people thought, and in this best paper award from last year at SIGIR, we said empirically it works, but there are all these problems, okay? So people completely ignored all these problems and just focus on, oh, it works, thumbs up, let's do it as well, okay? So I think like all these problems is something that got me thinking further on how to actually curb, or how to at least realize when LLMs go off the rails. It came out of a W1.3 workshop where people were talking about they were really focusing on fully automatic system and beyond human performance. And I said, well, you wouldn't know when you're beyond human because your performance metric actually goes down. Okay, so, and then people thought, oh, we just show the judgments to a human, LLM judgments. And I'm like, yeah, but like humans, I don't know myself. I'm a pretty shitty human. I will, of course, buy it. I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds right. Or you can do the other thing, and I think Seth was talking about that, where you essentially do expensive human judgments separately to just compare how well it works. Okay, that's one thing to do, but it's expensive. And honestly, I would argue doing manual judgments, it's an inhumane task. It's like you can also send people to the coal mine, and it's probably about as pleasant. As I always feel like whenever I talk to, let's say, track assessors or other assessors, I always profusely thank them for their service because I know I wouldn't want their job. Not even if they would pay me more than I get, okay. So we have these two ends where on the one end, we have these expensive human judgments, which so far we could just pour money at it. If you're Microsoft and Google, you are pouring money at it. If you're NIST, you kind of beg for money that you can pour in it. And on the other end, you have LLMs that you can run so fully automatic, but you don't really know whether it works. And there's work on, well, if one LLM judges the other, you have problems. Even when LLMs generate rationales, humans are still very convinced by the rationales, and they would come to a different assessment if they would not see any of that. So it's just and I'm not surprised, I know my own weaknesses. I wouldn't be able to do this right. So I was thinking about well, what could we do instead?
That's your 30 seconds.
How much time do I have?
You said 30 seconds.
Okay. That's fine.
She asked me to say, tell me when it's 30 seconds before the end.
All right. So I have to go to the business meeting, right? So what we did was we were trying to work on rubric and exam plus, which are sort of based on ideas that we published in 2021, which had, which essentially used sort of questions to kind of check whether the content that was retrieved is actually useful. We kind of modernized this. This is why the plus comes from. And then we said, well, it's not just exam questions, but we can also do nuggets. So that's why we call it rubric. So the idea is that humans should identify the grading rubric. And with grading rubric, I don't mean topicality, cohesiveness. I mean things like, for this particular query, what are the things that you need to talk about to be relevant? People call it nuggets and so on, but we can also argue to do that with questions. We did, for example, here for the query, when did rock and roll begin? You can break it down into different questions like which musicians are pioneers, which decade exactly did it start, which influences, performance styles were kind of like making it interesting. And then you can look at a passage like this, and you can ask, does it answer these questions? And you can either do this with sort of like a yes-no question answering check. This is what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. Or you can just say, give me an answer, and then LLM, can you self-rate yourself whether this passage would answer that question and what would be the answer that could we extract from that. So we can sort of somewhat like verify that on a low level, but ultimately we let the LLM self-grade themselves, similar to what Stes was presenting, where we just give ourselves these numbers. All right, so we can do that for the whole corpus. We get a whole bunch of grading sheets. And now we have these grades, and we can turn them either into relevance labels, and there's a little bit of a question how to do that. In the ICTIA work, we just use the maximum, simple. In the LLM judge channel, we kind of like actually try to like learn like a machine learning model to integrate all these different grades. So we will see tomorrow how well that worked. Or you can do things like a coverage-based metric where you ask, within the top 20 of my ranking, I want to cover as much ground as I can. I don't care where exactly that is, but somewhere in there it should be in there. So in this case, if that will be your top 3, we will get 5 out of 5 questions covered. Thumbs up. By the way, my next paper will be a version of alpha NDCG, just doing this kind of trick. All right, so we can evaluate whether it works. So this is a resource. This is just actually I stole these numbers from the ICTIA paper, so you can see, oh, it correlates really well with like the other typical prompts that we are using. But that's not the point. The point is that we have a natural way of integrating a human via controlling the grading rubric. We can also judge, we can see where generative models would fall in here. Like I just pulled up some very simple GPT methods. Would love to work with some RAG systems, by the way. And we can see that we can actually distinguish those, and we can actually have an informed reasoning for why one prior prompt is at the very top of the track ranking and the other one is at the very bottom. This is a chart that I took from the LLM for eval paper, where we did the same thing with track cars. We have all the systems on the x-axis, and we have the black line, that's the official leaderboard. And you can see that there are a bunch of like systems up here that are, how do I get there?
We'll need to finish up.
Yeah, that are all essentially the same. They actually produce essentially the same ranking. And, well, not very surprisingly, we don't distinguish among them. But you can see sort of like how different ideas of what kind of question I'm using would kind of like land us there. So you can do this kind of things with this like toolkit. This is like our grading script. And then once you have the grades, you can actually run this by a human assessor. We have some tools for verification, and you get some results at the end of it. This is my last slide. I think we were anticipating this as like a playground for you to play with, for me to play with, try different prompts, try different ideas for integrating a human. By the way, if anybody's really interested in doing user study with me on that, please come see me, because it's not my area of expertise. And I hope to give you another 3-hour talk at the poster session.
Perfect, thank you.